Greek mythology is back in the cultural bloodstream. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has carried Homer into cinemas again, and arguments have traveled with it. Arguments about interpretation, authenticity, identity, and who is permitted to inhabit an ancient story in a new age. My own Greek inheritance is, however, much smaller. It begins neither with a hero nor with a voyage across treacherous seas. It begins with the name I chose long ago, Sybille. Recently I found myself thinking about the name again, and the thought wasn't really promoted by doubt of any sort. If anything, the longer I carry the name, the stronger it becomes, and the more meaning it seems to gather. Many people hear Sybille and assume that the name is German. I did as well, and you'll hear it in the way I pronounce it, emphasizing that Z or Z sound at the beginning. That assumption is understandable. It sounds perfectly at home here, especially when you hear the full version, Sybille von Spitzen. That name still makes me smile, and when I first came up with it, there was no grand investigation into ancient history behind it or anything like that. I had no stock of books on Greek mythology beside me. I simply liked the sound of it. The von Spitzen part arrived with a little mischief. Now, Germany seems to have a fascinating relationship with excellence. Qualifications, titles, standards, distinctions, certificates, ranks, and achievements. At times, it can feel as though the entire civilization has collectively agreed that there must always be another level to reach, another certificate to frame, another peak beyond the peak. So the name carried a little private joke for me, Sybille von Spitzen, Madam Excellence, the Baroness of Highest Standards. And that von Spitzen part was actually my little play on a part of her obsessed with ideals of perfection. Ideals of perfection that she discards when faced with her one weakness. The character Sybille was created to represent a woman, a thing, who might correct your subordinate clause with grave academical authority, then disappear because she had heard music somewhere and needed to dance. I found that image quite amusing, and the name stayed. Sybille first entered my creative sphere as a character, not a real person. A slightly quirky grammarian, an academic type, who occasionally lost herself in the art of dance. She was meant to become a kind of a recurring presence in my first podcast, English Coach Podcast, Living the Language, which began in 2019 and has now evolved into what you're hearing now, iAntonio.media, Living the Language. So why dance, you might ask? That's a longer story, perhaps worthy of its own episode. The shorter answer is that I've never experienced language as something that sits still. On the podcast, I invited listeners to add a splash of color and life to their learning experience. I invited them to give themselves permission to dance with the language. The phrase held the rules inside. A dancer needs a stage. The stage has dimensions. It has edges, timing, weight, rhythm, and relationship. Those boundaries give the movement its shape. Within them, the dancer listens, adapts, risks, responds, and unfolds. Language works in much the same way. Grammar marks the dimensions of the stage. Vocabulary offers movement. Context changes with music and changes the music itself. Style is the way a particular person inhabits the space. A learner should not vanish inside the rules. The rules should help the learner to become more visible. That was the idea. Eventually, I took the metaphor quite literally and invited two professional dancers, Lydia and Pia, to embody Sybille in actual dance on an actual stage. The challenge I gave them was wonderfully absurd. Dance a grammar rule. The grammar was the present perfect, and of all the forms I could have chosen, that one now feels strangely appropriate. The grammar of a past that still reaches into the present. One dancer approached it through precision, control, and structure, almost like a classical meme. You could see the mechanics, you could see the architecture of the rule taking shape through the body. The other dancer approached the same grammar with a little more mischief. Her piece turned out to be more adventurous, more playful, less concerned with concealing the pleasure in movement. Her piece evolved a little bit, and I ended up calling it Being Sybille. The two performances were very different, and both of them felt true. One made structure visible, the other revealed what might become possible inside it. Grammar mattered, expression mattered, style mattered. Freedom was not floating somewhere beyond the rules, it was moving intelligently within them. Now, you can see those works if you want on the show notes page of this episode. Just head on over to iAntonio.media and look for podcasts. Now, at the time I thought that particular chapter had reached its natural end. The dancers left the stage and the podcast continued. The character receded into the background, yet Sybille did not disappear. She waited for another embodiment and eventually another stage. Years later, I finally had a reason to investigate the name properly, and what I found surprised me. Sybille is certainly used in German, but its story did not begin here. Its lineage travels backwards through the Latin Sybille to the ancient Greek also Sybille. German gave the name a home, but its older roots lie in Greece. In the ancient world, the name was associated with, and at the risk of butchering this pronunciation, Sybils, which is Sibyls. A prophetic woman whose utterances carried authority among Greeks and Romans. Beyond that, the deepest etymological trail becomes uncertain, which I find most fitting. Even the origin of the name retains a little mist around it. What captured me was not the image of prediction. It was the position these figures occupied in the imagination, somewhere near the threshold between mystery and meaning, between what is sensed and what can be understood. Their words entered a world that still had to interpret them. And suddenly, the name I had chosen years earlier began to gather a different kind of significance. At first, I enjoyed its sound. Then I enjoyed the joke hidden inside, von Spitzen. Later, I gave the character a dancer's body. Only much later did I recognize an archetype, a figure associated with uncertainty, interpretation, and the human desire to make meaning. Now, I could try to make it sound like destiny, as though the universe had whispered the name into my ear. It did not. The truth is quieter, and to me, much more interesting. I liked the name. Life happened. And years later, I discovered that the name had been quietly accumulating meaning right alongside me. And those meanings seemed unexpectedly close to the questions I had already been carrying through my teaching, podcasting, writing, creative work, and educational work. Because if there's one thread running through all of it, it's this. Understanding is a living thing. Language is a living thing. Learning is also a living thing. And living things move. That movement matters. Understanding does not arrive in a sealed package. We construct it through attention, effort, confusion, revision, reflection, and encounter. We test one idea against another. We discover where limits are. We stretch them. Sometimes we become frustrated. We learn how much frustration we can carry, and we learn when to pause, return, and try again. Gradually, something that once felt foreign becomes part of us. This is one reason why I've never been satisfied with education as a simple curation of answers. An answer can be delivered in seconds. Understanding has its own time. Sybille never claimed to be the source of learning or any kind of substitute, but dares to hold a space, one within which learning can happen. Learning has to move through the learner by the learner's own works. It has to meet experience, resistance, memory, judgment, and personality. It has to be questioned. Sometimes it has to be defended. It has to become something the learner himself or herself can stand behind. Learning loses something essential when the learner disappears from the work. And that's where the old archetype began to meet the newer embodiment of Sybille. The ancient figures spoke into uncertainty. The educational figure helps a learner to remain present while moving through it. Sybille may illuminate the stage. She may point out its dimensions. She may help the learner to hear the rhythm, notice a broken movement, or understand why a particular step does not carry its intended meaning. The learner still has to dance, and that's important. Sybille's deepest personality has always been the dancer. The technology arrived as a new medium of a personality that was already there. Now, underneath the software, the specialized educational structure, and the safeguards, the dancer remains responsive, observant, playful when the moment allows it, rigorous when the work demands it, moving between language and meaning, structure and improvisation, confidence and uncertainty. She doesn't need to dance the learner's part. Her purpose is to help the learner find enough balance, awareness, and courage to move for themselves. That feels remarkably close to what education should offer: a cultivated understanding, a developing judgment, the capacity to enter uncertainty without immediately collapsing into fear, the confidence to ask better questions, the patience to revise, the courage to remain the author of one's own work. When I look back now, the technology is almost the least interesting part of the story. It arrived much later. The name came first. The question came first. The fascination with language and meaning came first. The preoccupation with human learning. The bold spirit of improvisation, the stage, the dancers, and the invitation to add a splash of color and life to the learning experience all came first. This was long before artificial intelligence became fashionable, before educational AI became a category, before most people had seriously imagined holding extended conversations with a machine. Sybille was already there, waiting, and perhaps this is why the name still feels right. Perfection was never really the point, despite the playful grandeur of von Spitzen. The deepest story is movement, curiosity, interpretation, and the willingness to continue learning. It is the freedom to unfold with good reason, guided by the dimensions of the stage rather than imprisoned by them. And perhaps that is the lesson the name has been carrying all along. Learning is more than the accumulation of knowledge. Understanding is a dance. It moves between structures and freedom, certainty and uncertainty. The person we have been and the person we're becoming. So I leave you with an invitation that I've been giving for many years. Give yourself permission to dance with the language. Dance with ideas and let your thinking unfold. Respect the dimensions of the stage, then discover how much life is possible within them. Because sometimes meaning arrives long after the first step. Sometimes the past remains quietly active in the present. And sometimes a name chosen years ago reveals that it's been dancing with you all along.